I'm Stella, 32, and literally last weekend my rep as the family's doormat? Yeah, it totally backfired. The penthouse I'd worked my butt off to earn, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown at Emily's wedding reception. My parents, with their usual audacity, demanded I gift it to the newlyweds, and when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You're so selfish, Stella," my mother yelled, with everyone staring like I'd crashed the cake. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note, this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Brim Revenge. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now back to the story. The reception hall glittered with fairy lights, laughter bubbling over the clink of champagne glasses. I stood by the dessert table, forcing a smile as relatives cooed over Emily, my younger sister, radiant in her lace gown. She was always the golden child, while I was the dependable one. Overlooked, overworked, expected to sacrifice. My fingers tightened around my glass as my mother approached, her smile sharp as a blade. "Stella, we need to talk about your apartment," she said, voice low but firm. "It's perfect for Emily and Tom to start their life." I froze, my stomach twisting. My penthouse, my sanctuary, earned through years of late nights and hustle, wasn't theirs to claim. "No," I said, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. Her eyes widened, unaccustomed to my defiance. My father joined, his jaw tight. "It's what's best for the family," he pressed, as if my life was just collateral. Guests nearby glanced over, sensing the tension. I set my glass down, hands trembling, and met their gazes. "It's mine," I said, louder now. My mother's hand twitched, her face reddening. "You ungrateful," she started, but I cut her off. "I've given enough." The air thickened, conversation stalling. Emily, catching the scene, clutched Tom's arm, her expression a mix of shock and entitlement. I felt the weight of every eye, but something inside me snapped free. For years I'd bent to their demands, but this was my line. My mother's lips pursed, her hand rising as if to silence me. I braced myself, knowing this moment would change everything. My mother's hand hovered, but she didn't strike, not yet. The reception's hum resumed, but I felt the sting of old wounds reopening. Growing up, I was the shadow to Emily's light. I'd pour my heart into school projects, acing exams, only to hear, "That's nice, Stella," while Emily's mediocre grades earned parades. I remember my high school graduation, clutching my valedictorian medal, watching my parents beam as Emily, 2 years younger, bragged about her cheerleading trophy. "She's going places," Dad said, ruffling her hair. My medal? Barely a glance. At 22, I landed my first big job, a marketing gig that had me burning midnight oil. I called home, excited, only for Mom to pivot to Emily's new modeling gig. "She's in a magazine, Stella, can you believe it?" I could. I'd believed it my whole life. My promotions, my late nights coding side projects, my savings for that penthouse, they were invisible. Emily's engagement party last year was the worst. I'd just closed a major client deal, but when I mentioned it, Dad waved it off. "Let's focus on Emily's big day," he said, as if my work was a footnote. I stared at my mother now, her demand for my penthouse echoing those years of dismissal. My fingers curled into fists, nails biting my palms. I saw Emily across the room, laughing, oblivious to the weight I'd carried. I'd spent years building a life they couldn't see, sacrificing sleep, relationships, time, to prove my worth. Yet here they were expecting me to hand over my greatest achievement. My chest tightened, not with sadness but with a slow-burning anger. I wasn't just the overlooked sister anymore. I was done being erased. My anger simmered, but beneath it, a memory glowed. Grandma's will, my secret lifeline. 3 years ago, I sat in her cozy living room, her frail hands pressing a sealed envelope into mine. "This is yours, Stella," she'd whispered, eyes sharp despite her fading strength. "Your parents won't understand, but you will." I'd tucked it away, puzzled, until her funeral 6 months later. Alone in my apartment, I opened it. A legitimate will leaving me her penthouse, her pride in my grit scrawled in her elegant cursive. "For Stella, who builds her own path," it read. My throat tightened as I traced her words, feeling seen for the first time. I'd kept it hidden, knowing my family's greed. Grandma had believed in me, funding my first coding boot camp when Mom scoffed, "Computers aren't for girls." That penthouse wasn't just a home, it was my victory, earned through years of freelancing, pitching, failing, and rising again. I'd turned down dates, skipped vacations, and poured every dollar into that dream. When I moved in, I stood on the balcony, city lights sprawling below, and cried. Not from sadness, but triumph. Now, at Emily's wedding, my parents' demand threatened to unravel it all. My fingers brushed the clutch where I'd slipped a copy of Grandma's will, a habit born of paranoia. I hadn't planned to use it, but their audacity changed everything. My jaw clenched as I recalled Mom's dismissive tone, Dad's expectant stare. They didn't know about the will, but I did. It was my armor, my truth. I straightened, meeting Mom's glare. This wasn't just about a penthouse, it was about who I'd become. My resolve hardened, but the wedding day loomed like a storm. Emily's reception was hours away, and I stood in my penthouse, staring at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. My fingers traced the edge of Grandma's will, now tucked in my clutch for safekeeping. I'd spent the morning preparing, ironing my navy dress, practicing a calm smile in the mirror, but my stomach churned. My family's demand for my home wasn't just a request. It was a test, and I knew refusing would spark war. I glanced at my phone, notifications piling up from work. My marketing firm was on the cusp of a game-changing deal with a tech giant, years of my hustle about to pay off. But tonight, I'd face the family who'd never seen my worth. I pictured Mom's tight-lipped judgment, Dad's booming voice, Emily's smug glance. My hands shook as I applied lipstick, smudging it slightly. I wiped it off, cursing under my breath. Why did I still care what they thought? Slipping into my heels, I caught my reflection, tall, composed, but eyes betraying a flicker of dread. I'd avoided family events for months, citing work, but Emily's wedding was non-negotiable. You owe her this, Mom had said, guilt-tripping me into attending. I grabbed my clutch, the will's weight grounding me. If they pushed me tonight, I'd push back harder. The elevator dinged, and I stepped in, heart pounding. This wasn't just a wedding, it was the moment I'd either bend or break free. The reception hall buzzed with chatter, but every step I took felt like wading through quicksand. I clutched my clutch, Grandma's will a silent anchor as I navigated the crowd. Relatives swarmed Emily, her laughter ringing like a bell, while I hovered near the bar, already bracing for the onslaught. Aunt Clara spotted me first, her smile dripping with pity. "Stella, still working those long hours?" she asked, eyebrows raised as if my career was a cute hobby. I nodded, biting back a retort, my fingers tightening around my glass. Then came Uncle Mark, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. "No ring yet, Stella? Emily's got it all figured out." His chuckle grated, and I forced a laugh, my jaw aching. Cousins chimed in, their questions veiled jabs. "Still in that tiny apartment?" They didn't know it was a penthouse, and I didn't correct them. My chest tightened, each comment a pinprick to old wounds. I scanned for an escape, but Mom appeared, her eyes glinting with purpose. "Stella, we need you to step up," she said, voice saccharine but sharp. "Emily deserves that apartment." My breath caught, the room tilting slightly. Guests nearby quieted, sensing the shift. I set my glass down, hands trembling, and met her gaze. "It's my home," I said, voice low but firm. Her lips pursed, a flash of anger crossing her face. "Don't be selfish," she hissed, stepping closer. My heart pounded, but I stood my ground, feeling the weight of every overlooked sacrifice. This wasn't just about the penthouse, it was about years of being erased. My mother's hiss hung in the air, and before I could respond, her hand lashed out, slapping my cheek with a sharp crack. The room froze, glasses clinked to a stop, eyes swiveled toward us. My skin stung, but the shock was worse, a betrayal laid bare in front of the wedding guests. I touched my cheek, fingers trembling, as Emily gasped, clutching Tom's arm. "Mom," she squeaked, but her voice held no defense for me. My father stepped forward, his face a mask of cold authority. "Stella, you're embarrassing us," he said as if I'd struck myself. Then it spilled out. Their plan. "We have a will," Mom said, voice low, venomous. "Grandma left the penthouse to the family, not just you." My heart stopped. A forged will? I'd seen Grandma's real one, her handwriting unmistakable, naming me alone. My fingers tightened around my clutch, the paper inside my shield. "That's a lie," I said, voice shaking but clear. Mom's eyes narrowed, but Dad pressed on, louder now. "You'll sign it over, or you're no daughter of ours." The ultimatum landed like a blade. Guests whispered, their stares heavy, but I felt a strange clarity. My family wasn't just demanding my home, they were rewriting my truth. My chest heaved, anger drowning out the pain in my cheek. I straightened, meeting their gazes. You don't get to decide who I am, I said, each word deliberate. My mother's face twisted, but I turned away. Heart racing. They'd crossed a line and I was done bending. My mother's slap still burned, but as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed in my clutch, cutting through the fog of humiliation. I stepped toward the hall's edge, away from prying eyes, and answered. It was my lawyer, Rachel, her voice steady but urgent. Stella, I've reviewed the documents you sent, she said. Your grandmother's will is ironclad. Your parents' version is a blatant forgery. My breath caught, her words a lifeline. She'd cross-checked the signatures, dates, and notary seals. The penthouse was undeniably mine. I clutched the phone, my knuckles whitening, as Rachel continued. They've been planning this for months, using Emily's wedding as leverage. My stomach twisted. My family's betrayal ran deeper than I'd imagined. I glanced back at the reception, where Mom whispered furiously to Dad, their eyes darting toward me. The forged will wasn't just greed. It was a calculated move to erase my independence. My fingers brushed the real will in my clutch, Grandma's words echoing, for Stella, who builds her own path. I straightened, my heart pounding with a new fire. File the paperwork, I told Rachel, voice low but firm. I want this settled. She promised swift action, and as I hung up, the weight of their betrayal shifted to resolve. I wasn't just fighting for my penthouse, I was fighting for the truth Grandma entrusted to me. The crowd's murmurs faded as I steeled myself, knowing the next move would be mine. They tried to break me, but this call had lit the fuse for my rebellion. The call from Rachel still echoed in my mind as I turned back to the reception, my resolve a burning coal in my chest. The crowd's whispers grew louder, but I didn't shrink. I walked toward the center of the hall, where Mom and Dad stood with Emily, their faces a mix of smugness and unease. I stopped a few feet away, my clutch tight in my hand, Grandma's will a silent weapon. You lied, I said, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. Mom's eyes widened, her hand twitching as if to silence me again. You forged Grandma's will, I continued, my voice steady despite the pounding in my ears. The penthouse is mine, legally, and you knew it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dad's face reddened, but he sputtered. That's absurd. I held up my hand, cutting him off. I have proof, I said, tapping my clutch. My lawyer's already moving against you. Emily's mouth dropped open, her bouquet trembling in her hands. Mom stepped forward, voice low. You're ruining this day, she hissed, but I saw the fear in her eyes. I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. You ruined it when you tried to steal my home. I turned, facing the stunned guests, their phones already out, recording. I'm done with your lies, I said, my gaze locking on my family. Consider this my resignation. I walked out, heels clicking on the polished floor, leaving their hypocrisy exposed. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. Free at last. The night air was crisp as I left the reception, my heart still racing from the confrontation, but a new calm settled as I reached the quiet street. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend Lena, waiting at a nearby cafe with our tight-knit crew. I walked the 2 blocks, my heels clicking softly, and pushed open the cafe door. The warm glow of string lights and the smell of espresso hit me, and there they were. Lena, Marcus, and Priya, my chosen family, waving me over with grins that didn't demand anything from me. Lena slid a latte my way, her eyes scanning my face. You okay, Stell? She asked, her voice soft but steady. I nodded, my fingers wrapping around the warm mug, the tension in my shoulders easing. I just walked out on them, I said, my voice low, almost disbelieving. Marcus leaned forward, his brow furrowed. They didn't deserve you, he said, his hand briefly squeezing mine. Priya, usually all jokes, was quiet, her eyes fierce. You stood up to them, she said, that's huge. Their words wrapped around me like a blanket, so different from the cold dismissal of the reception. We laughed about old times, late-night study sessions, my first pitch win, moments my family never cared to celebrate. Lena raised her mug, toasting to Stella's freedom. I clinked my cup against hers, a smile breaking through. Here, I wasn't the overlooked sister. I was just me, valued for who I was. The contrast stung, but it also healed. The cafe's warmth lingered in my chest as I returned to my penthouse, but my phone buzzed relentlessly. Missed calls from Mom, Dad, even Emily. I set it face down on the counter, my fingers brushing the smooth marble, grounding myself in the space Grandma entrusted to me. The confrontation at the wedding had cracked something open, and I wasn't about to let them claw their way back in. I poured a glass of water, my hands steady now, and sat at my desk, pulling up my laptop to draft an email. Effective immediately, I typed, addressing my family. I'm done with your manipulation. My fingers paused, the cursor blinking. I added, don't contact me unless it's through my lawyer. Each word felt like laying a brick in a wall I'd never built before. My phone lit up again, Mom's name flashing, but I silenced it, my jaw tight. I pictured her frantic, trying to spin the narrative, but I was no longer her pawn. I called Rachel next, her calm voice a lifeline. Send them a cease and desist, I said, my voice firm. They don't get to harass me anymore. She agreed, promising to file by morning. Hanging up, I stood and walked to the balcony, the city lights sprawling below. My family's betrayal still stung, but I felt a new strength. I wasn't just protecting my penthouse, I was claiming my right to exist without their shadow. My boundaries were set, and for the first time I felt unapologetically in control. The morning sun streamed through my penthouse windows, casting a warm glow on the hardwood floors Grandma once walked. I stood in the living room, my laptop open to a new project proposal, my fingers hovering over the keys. My marketing firm's big deal had closed yesterday, a multi-million-dollar contract that would cement my name in the industry. But this project was personal, a mentorship program for young women in tech, named after Grandma. I typed her name into the header, Eleanor's Legacy, my throat tightening as I pictured her proud smile. I walked to the bookshelf, pulling out a photo of us from years ago, her arm around my shoulders, both of us laughing. My family had tried to erase her gift to me, but I was reclaiming it. I'd already contacted a local nonprofit to fund scholarships using profits from my firm. My phone stayed silent, no calls from Mom or Dad since Rachel's cease and desist. Emily had texted once, a week, I'm sorry, but I didn't reply. My legacy wasn't theirs to define anymore. I sat back at my desk, my pen tapping the notebook where I'd sketched the program's outline. Each detail, coding workshops, career fairs, felt like a brick in a new foundation, one built on my terms. My family's name, once a weight, now felt like something I could reshape. I glanced at the photo again, my resolve firm. This wasn't just about success, it was about honoring Grandma's trust and proving I was enough. I stood on my penthouse balcony, the city humming below, a soft breeze tugging at my hair. My hands rested on the railing, the cool metal grounding me as I stared at the skyline, its lights no longer a challenge but a canvas. The weight of Emily's wedding, my mother's slap, the forged will, it all felt distant now, like a storm that had passed. I'd spent years chasing my family's approval, bending to their demands, but standing here, I realized I didn't need it. My worth wasn't tied to their validation, it was in the life I'd built, the choices I'd made. I thought of Grandma, her quiet strength, her belief in me when no one else cared. The penthouse, her gift, was more than a home. It was a reminder that I was enough. My fingers traced the edge of a small locket she'd given me, tucked under my shirt, its weight a steady comfort. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone anymore, not Mom, not Dad, not Emily. My mentorship program, my career, my boundaries. They were my legacy, built from grit and love, not resentment. I exhaled, a smile tugging at my lips. The city stretched out before me, vast and full of possibility. For the first time I felt truly free, not from anger, but from the need to be seen by those who never would. Peace settled in my chest, warm and unshakable. I was Stella, and that was enough though. So, what do you think? Did I stand up for myself enough, or should I have gone harder? Standing on that balcony, I realized family isn't always blood. It's the people who see you, lift you up, and fight for you. I cut ties with the toxic ones, but I'm curious, have you ever had to draw a line like that? Drop your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you reclaimed your space. If this hit home, give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about breaking free and owning your worth. You've got this. Keep building your own path, just like I did.